Yeah. Hey everyone. That was fun. Hey everybody. Sorry I'm a little late. Just had spaced out for a second and forgot I had to stream. But welcome to Comic Island. Today we're talking about the first episode of Falcon Winter Soldier. So, I had a bit of a conundrum. Over the last 2 days, we had the Snyder Cut and this come out, and basically I was just like, oh, okay, well, we'll do two streams for each thing. Uh, at which point, I just had to decide between the two, and what it really came down to, more than anything else, like, personal feelings or stakes aside or whatever, the last video I put out was a DC video, so I decided to make a Marvel stream. Usually that's like how these things are decided, just so there's not a lot of favoritism or like leaning heavily towards one company randomly. So I usually just do it like that. So today we're going to talk about Falcon Winter Soldier. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the Snyder Cut. So we're going to try and keep it mostly on to the Snyder Cut. Oh, hey, there we go. Forgot to have this. So overall, a pretty strong first episode. Certainly not as... I finished the first episode of WandaVision excited and blown away and being like, what? That was nothing like the rest of the MCU in that first episode. And I was very thrown by it. I was like, wow, this is something really different and interesting. Try3, thank you for joining us. Appreciate having you on as always. Raphael and I were chatting a little bit earlier, but I don't think he'll be joining us today. But yeah, so in comparison to WandaVision, which had a really strong first episode, this felt a little underwhelming in comparison, but not like catastrophically so. It's just in terms of comparing these two things, which are worth comparing. They're the two Disney Plus shows, which is its own thing, and they're also coming back to back apparently, which I guess I didn't really fully appreciate, but they really are close together in their release, which I personally appreciate. I think it's nice to have the MCU back and kind of having its own little thing. Try3 says, yeah, WandaVision was very unique. The thing about that, though, is WandaVision definitely shifted back towards the MCU over time with its episodes, and while I like the show overall, there are aspects of its ending that were underwhelming. So I was kind of thinking about this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it's not WandaVision. I do believe that it's kind of building to more stuff, and it might have more of a payoff at the end. Because I truly think the arc of this show, based on this first episode, but just I said this about the show in general, is it's kind of about Sam Wilson taking on the mantle of Captain America. I believe. I think that's the whole premise of this, is working with that and dealing with like the stuff that happens at the end of this episode, which we'll get into, but I'll leave for now and just say I did get excited at that, because that's a good kicker of an ending. Oh, I didn't actually think to check. Do I still have it open? I don't. I didn't think to check if there was a post-credits scene in this episode. WandaVision, you kind of had to look for them. They weren't in all of them, but they were there. So, okay. I think I can quickly... No, it's going to get all weird with copyright and stuff. I'll deal with that later. But if there is a post-credit scene, let me know in chat, I guess. But beyond that, Try3 says, but I like the straightforward action genre. I'm kind of... Oh, and he also says there's no post-credit scene. Thank you. So that's fine. I think it's kind of cool how the Disney Plus shows... with the MCU sort of play with that a little bit, and they certainly are going to exist, I'm sure, with Winter Soldier, but it can really happen at the end of the season, and I would be fine with that. No, I just gotta get used to that. Zach Taft says, so, man, was it stupid that Falcon gave the shield to the government, which now has their own Captain America? Yeah, if that is for sure what happened, which I guess is the case. Did I miss a scene where he does give it to the government? Or something? I might have been elsewhere, preoccupied, but it did look like a pretty good recreation of the vibranium shield. Because I guess like Falcon was staring at it at the beginning of the episode. I'm fooling myself with how, or not. I'm exposing myself with how recently I've seen the episode relative to the stream, because there's like a 10-minute window there, and I haven't had time to fully process everything I've seen, I guess, at this point, because now I'm getting all mixed up. But regardless, that's US Agent, which is pretty cool. So I guess that's a good segue to that. That's honestly the part I found most exciting was the ending of this episode. Oh, okay. Zach Taff says there is a scene where Sam donates the shield. Yeah, I blanked on that. But overall, I do think it's kind of all in the right direction. It very much reminds me of something almost like Bourne Identity, but more than anything else, like the Winter Soldier movie. And that's kind of what I expected out of it more than anything else. So it's very much what I expected, which is not the most exciting thing in the world, I suppose, but it's entertaining. I like Sam's current story and situation. I kind of feel his, we'll say, malaise or reluctance to take on that shield. I kind of am with him in his current mindset, but then I also think it leads well into the scene where he's feeling that twinge of regret when he sees US Agent walk onto the stage. Like he blew that opportunity, and I think that's like a really solid, interesting bit of writing to kind of start out with. Then there's all that other interesting stuff going on kind of around that. We have an excellent opening where Falcon's flying around, and I actually had to pause and go back for a second because he's at the Libyan border, but when they're screaming that in an action scene, I almost thought they said Latvarian border. But overall, it's, yeah, like I said, pretty much what I expected. There's like a bunch of personal stuff going on. I like Bucky's whole attempt to make amends, and the rules threw me at first that he's kind of set up with his therapist, but it won me over. I kind of get what they're going for, and like I said, overall, it's a pretty solid new series, and I'm quite excited for it. Zach Taff says, so the US Agent was when in the comics? Well, I don't know when he started, but he's been a presence for a long time, and he kind of has been on different teams and is this whole character. And honestly, is something that would be a pretty fun Origins bio if I had been more able to plan ahead, I guess. But yeah, I'm excited for that. I don't really know that actor or anything, but it was a solid intro, or at least I didn't recognize him under that mask. Oh, okay. Try3 says he donated the shield at the press conference where we first saw War Machine, but I think he thought it would have been stored in a museum. Well, that's a fair assumption for him to make, especially in the context of that scene where they're basically opening this museum. That's interesting. I must have missed that because I did like that scene a lot because it was like, oh shoot, like War Machine's in here. This is a neat kind of series where I haven't like gotten super involved in the production news cycle or anything like that. So it's all kind of fresh excitement for me. Even some of these images here, like, man, it's going to be fun seeing some of these characters turn up and stuff like that. Sharon Carter is a big one, or Carter, I don't really, I get the names mixed up, but the lady is going to be in too. So, and it's kind of all just these characters dealing with Chris Evans being excised from the MCU and stuff. And the tone they take with that, as well as the general fallout of Infinity War and the blip, as they call it, is very interesting. It's kind of cool seeing Sam have to deal with that, and like just personally, even just with the people around him and stuff. Fascinating stuff. And then there's one scene where this couple comes up to him, and the man's like, "You brought my wife back. Like, thank you so much." And it's just like, wow. That's what the Avengers are to people now, and I think that's pretty cool. The whole world of the MCU is different than even in a way that like the Marvel Comics kind of isn't. But like the Marvel Comics world has its own differences too, but the MCU's kind of taken on its own little history now. And unlike the whole constant referral to the incident with the first Avengers arrival, which did kind of make sense, but then got a little overused in like the Netflix shows and stuff like that. It feels very appropriate that this earth-shattering event has made everything different, and like people's psychology is different, the way people think and the way they need like to deal with it and have this leadership, because it's just like the world just fell apart, and now all these people are back, and it's chaotic again, and it's not just clean the way it could have easily been or often is in the comics. I like that. And these shows are really cool in how they're exploring it. And we're just kind of doing these slow start towards bigger, more Avengeries, larger MCU things like the Guardians and the space and the actual Avengers and stuff. Personally, I think that was the right move because after all this big Infinity War stuff, it is a wonderful cooler to have this weird and dynamic WandaVision show and then this more back to basics Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, which I think is needed to kind of ground us a little bit, take in everything that's happened in Infinity War, which just those movies go by a mile a minute with all the stuff that's happening. So giving us a little bit of breathing room, and then we'll build up to like the Fantastic Four and all of Marvel's other crazy plans. So that being said, and I warned you all at the beginning of WandaVision about this too, I would not expect any earth-shattering things beyond the big thesis of this show. The big revelation is kind of what we already know is going to happen. But I assume it's going to be about Falcon taking on the Shield. Unless we're all mistaken in this or something, but it definitely seems as though that's the direction we're going, and even with the characters and stuff like that. And Bucky's going to be an interesting side to all of that, so is this lady. But I definitely think that's the focus here. Try3 says Bucky on a date was hilarious. It was, even just in the way he has to like hide things, and it's like, well, you just have to start on so many lies, but I don't know how else you get around that. And it's one of those things where, you know, it's probably going to be easier for Bucky with someone he knows or something like that. Zach Taft says the next Marvel's Avengers DLC is Black Panther. That's cool. They kind of were hinting at that heavily. Try3 says he specifically said the shield belonged to Steve. Yeah, and well, that's like the whole thing. It's like the first lines of the show is like, this feels like someone else's. And I think that's going to be a big character thing, is reconciling with that, reconciling with the fact that his friend is gone, his larger-than-life superhero friend. It's going to be interesting, and I think that will be worth exploring. Try3 says, how old are you? 102. But that's the thing. He says that, and she just plays it off as a joke, and then she asks why, like, he's got a glove on or something, and he's like, well, poor circulation. And that's what I was getting at. Like, it's just like, oh, what do you tell a person like that? The cool side of it is, for most of these characters, you'd just be recognized and people would know your story at this point, especially like with Sam. And I think that's just such an easy icebreaker for them more often than not. But of course, for Winter Soldier, like, everything's so much more confidential. I do also love, I think I saw someone say it in chat, but I might have missed it. There's a wonderful little nod to his time in Wakanda where Bucky talks about, like, that's his one moment of peace before he just got flung into the next thing. And that's been his life, his entire life. So that's pretty amusing overall. Try3 says, he definitely killed the old guy's son, so his relationship is probably doomed. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to be like an ongoing character thing or if that was just like kind of a one-off for this episode, but we'll see. I think the bigger arc is him kind of becoming Sam's new friend, and that should be pretty like good character stuff. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see their dynamic together, and I think it'll be worth exploring. Their whole meeting, I assume, will be a thing, and I am looking forward to it. I think this will be a good show overall. Zach Taft says, so the government must have made that fake cap so they could better control people to push their agenda. I don't think it's, well, I mean, maybe, but I think it really is just them being like, well, we have this shield now, and it's what the dude was saying. I don't think he was being too non-genuine, just being like, we need a new Captain America because we need like a face to these superheroes who are often like wearing these masks or whatever. I think, you know, it would be very easy for there to be some shady, nefarious government plan. But we just did that with WandaVision. So I'm hoping the real dynamic is with the weird mask thing going on, which is some strange business we don't know a lot of the details of yet. So yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty solid show. I would recommend it if you haven't checked it out yet. It's worth watching, just like WandaVision, in my opinion. And Try3 says, for all from the precedent of WandaVision, I think there's no one-offs. Everyone will be recurring to various degrees. You know what? That's a solid point. So I think you got a better idea of that. I misread the scene, to be honest. And I think you're right, because they did indulge in that character more than they would just like a one-off thing like I was thinking of it. Ferris Shao says, "Hi, Daddy. I feel the show is a bit slow for some reason." Well, it doesn't help that the first episode of WandaVision is like a 22-minute thing, a deliberate nod to the typical half-hour like television show kind of business. However, I think the half-hour pilot, like kind of whatever you want to call it, was more refreshing than a big 50-minute chunk, because I also kind of found it a little slow even around a lot of its action and stuff, and it did just kind of feel like, okay, we've seen a lot of this stuff before. I enjoyed it, but there is that side of it where it's like it was a bit of a slow burn. And if you kind of go back and listen to my early words in this stream, I was a little more underwhelmed relative to WandaVision, and that's kind of how I started the tone of this thing, kind of for that reason, but also kind of under the assumption that it is literally a slow burn and we're building up towards this. But yeah, I think that's a solid review for this first episode. I got a Snyder Cut to watch, so we'll leave it at that, and I'll see you guys next time, hopefully tomorrow, to talk about that here on Comic Island.